Welcome to the Rational Optimist podcast, where we give a rational take on today's news. Today, you'll hear about a revolutionary new college that just opened its doors in Texas and why that's a great thing for free speech rights. You'll hear about the stunning growth of solar power and why it's proving doubters wrong, and even the biggest supporters of solar are surprised. And the dangerous new AI law that just passed in California and what it means for innovation there. First, at long last, the University of Austin has officially opened its doors. We've been anticipating this. Tell us why it's a big deal.
Yeah, so maybe take a step back, Dan, and just talk about why college needs a revamp, right? So over the past 50 years, cost of a four-year degree surged 23-fold. Not 23%, 23-fold. And meanwhile, the wealth premium of going to college, basically your lifetime earnings of a college degree holder or someone that just graduates high school, has gone down and down and down and collapsed to the point where it's really no longer worth it, right? And I think maybe the biggest thing of all is college has just turned into a jobs program for bureaucrats. It's no longer about teaching the kids. Just one example, over the past 10 years, University of Michigan added 5,300 administrators and only added 144 teachers. And you're seeing this right across the board. So I think University of Austin, Texas is going to go after this college bureaucracy.
They've got a constitution. The UATX does. They've got a constitution modeled after the U.S. Constitution. They've got a Bill of Rights. So all colleges say they're for free speech, right? But they're actually putting the infrastructure in place to make sure the college stays on its stated mission, which is free speech, meritocracy, and a real search for the truth, even if it hurts people's feelings.
Right. And I would encourage people just to go and check out their YouTube channel. There's some great talks on there. And if you're wondering, are they really for free speech? Go check out Michael Schellenberger's talk. Why is nobody telling us this? Or escaping the woke mind virus, right? Something like that. But go and check out what they're producing. I'm very excited for it, and I think they're going to succeed where many other startup colleges have failed.
Did you see the free speech watchdog FIRE? They released their annual college free speech rankings yesterday.
Tell me.
Dead last. Take a guess who was dead last. It's the second year in a row.
The college that we ran around a couple of months ago, Harvard University, the prestigious.
That is correct. Second to last is Columbia. Third to last is NYU. They're all rated as abysmal, and most of the Ivy Leagues are in the bottom decile of the rankings. The ones at the top, University of Virginia is at the top, and it's mostly state schools at the top.
So let me ask you a question. I know your son Jack is a genius in waiting. He comes to you in 15 years or maybe 13 years, and he says, "Dad, I just got accepted to Harvard. What do you do?"
I mean, who knows what the world's going to look like in 15 years? Let's hypothetically say he was 18 right now and he got accepted to Harvard. I would say you should also apply to UATX, and then we'd have a decision to make. Honestly, for all its problems, probably still have to send your kid to an Ivy League school if they get in. It's like skipping the line of life, right? It's how you make a network. It's how you make connections. It's still very important, unfortunately. But I think UATX is taking the first couple steps of disrupting that.
Right, exactly. And the unique thing about UATX, something that I don't think any other private college or startup college has ever had, or at least not in my lifetimes, is it already has the network. Okay, so it was co-founded by Joe Lonsdale, who was a leading venture capitalist and co-founder of PayPal. And he's friends with Elon Musk and Mark Andreessen and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. So you could imagine UATX grads in the first year plugging into some of those amazing companies, like SpaceX, like Tesla, like OpenAI. So that's really the thing it solves for that nobody else does, at least not in the startup scene.
What do you think's the core problem of college? Like, why was it? How was it able to get so bad?
That's a great question. I think I look at whether it's college or whether it's governments or whether it's just old companies like Boeing or even Google, which is 30 years old or whatever now. The bureaucracy just takes over time, and they just get away from the core mission. So particularly within schools, it was, focus on the truth, veritas. a lot of the college coat of arms still have that. But over time, it just gets taken over by people who want all these different agendas, and it's cozy and it's nice, and they don't have to really compete with anyone. What do you think?
I would say it's the buy now, pay later nature of college, where it's so easy to get loans, non-dischargeable loans. Kids who are 18 are able to borrow $100,000 or more to basically party for 4 years. And that's always been the case. But I think there would have been a revolt a lot sooner if the funding scheme wasn't there. And of course, student loans are owned by the U.S. government. So that's I put the blame squarely at the feet of the government.
Yeah. Super positive about UATX, although I think Harvard and Yale and Stanford are still going to be around 100 years from now. I will remind you that Harvard University is older than America. They're very, very hard to disrupt. But moving on to the next topic, maybe let's talk about Elon Musk's SpaceX, which recently launched the biggest and most powerful rocket ever into space. This was the fourth launch of Starship, which went stunningly. Everything went perfect. What are your thoughts on this one, Dan?
I gotta be honest, whenever you bring up space, I'm always kind of like, cool, but who really cares? This doesn't affect my life. But you sent me over a bunch of research that changed my mind. The stuff that can be done in space, like the drugs that can be made in space because it's zero gravity, the equipment that can be made in space because there are no impurities. You made the very good point that cutting the costs to get to space, which is what SpaceX is doing. You could share that chart. Cutting the cost to get to space is basically opening up an entire new frontier, an entire new space economy where we'll be able to do lots of stuff that just wasn't possible before.
Yeah, we'll show two charts here. The first one is the annual number of objects launched into space. And you can see basically America in the past 5 years has it's in a league of its own, and 95% of those launches is SpaceX. For all intents and purposes, SpaceX is now the space economy, leaving everyone else in its dust. And so I know we're going to talk about solar in a while, but what you see, the more you do something, usually the cheaper it gets, because each time you do it, you figure out to do things better, faster, cheaper. And you can see in the next chart, SpaceX has reduced the cost of going to Earth by 98% since the 70s. So
of going to the moon, of going to space.
No, of reaching low Earth orbit.
Okay.
Yes. So we all familiar with the space shuttle. Well, now it's 98% cheaper than to go to space on a SpaceX rocket than it was on the space shuttle. I agree, there's incredible things happening in space, manufacturing drugs and fiber optic cables that are faster, that have no bubbles and stuff. The other thing that I'd say to you is you just never know what's going to come out of these innovations. So out of the first space race 1.0 in the 60s and 70s, we got all these amazing things like solar panels, like GPS, like artificial organs. So God knows what's going to come out of this one.
Yeah, you look at the trend in the cost of getting into low orbit. It basically, there was no trend until SpaceX came along, and then they reducing costs, in my opinion, is heroic. Like you think about the human genome, how expensive it used to be to map that, and the fact that that's gotten a lot cheaper. If at first it seemed like a science project, like who's this going to help? What's this ever going to do? But all of the new drugs and cancer treatments and all the exciting stuff that's coming online right now wouldn't have been possible without that. You could say the same thing with batteries and a lot of other areas. When you reduce the costs of doing something, it opens up all kinds of possibilities that most people couldn't have even imagined before it happened.
Right. I think SpaceX you go onto its website and it has a recent launches section, and it's launching Starlink. So Starlink is its internet satellite service, but it's basically launching rockets every 2 or 3 days. You can think of, and on part of those rockets, it carries things for other companies. So up to the International Space Station or to do other projects in space. So it's basically like every 3 days, a bus goes to space. And you can go on to a website and you can book your trip on that bus. And instead of it being a couple of $1,000s like it is today per kilogram, imagine it's $100. Imagine all the innovation that's now going to be possible. Like maybe that crazy, sci-fi prediction of like mining asteroids that will actually be possible.
Starlink's awesome, by the way. I installed a Starlink for my in-laws because they bought a house up here in Vermont and they had to have very, very slow internet, or alternatively Starlink, and it's great. You lay some concrete, put it on a pole, scan the sky with your phone and like find the right positioning, and then you got high-speed internet that's way faster than the wired connection would have been.
I saw United Airlines, I think Hawaiian or Alaskan Airlines was the first to offer Starlink on the plane. I think United is now doing a prediction. Any airline that doesn't have Starlink is going to start losing customers fast. Me personally, I actually like not having the internet in the sky. It's like the only place that you no longer have internet, but I think it's going to be a big deal for a lot of people.
What's that trend of taking flights without having any internet or technology? Have you heard that?
Raw dogging.
You're not a raw dogger, are you?
No, listen, I work, but the beauty of not having zero distractions. It's not like you can go on and check your email. I'm not one of those raw doggers that sits staring at the flight screen for 12 hours. That's sick.
It's pretty funny. The focus is underrated. I had to write an email yesterday and I like struggled with it all day because I was doing it on my computer, and every 5 minutes you're like, wonder what's going on Twitter. And then last night I was laying in bed without my computer and I started working on the email on my phone, and there was no distractions, and it was much better. So I'm with you.
Dude, you just broke the golden rule. No phones in the bedroom. Come on.
I don't follow that one. All right. Solar power is proving the doubters wrong. Doubters including you. New data shows that solar energy is the fastest growing source of energy in history, outpacing all projections. We're now installing more solar panels every day than we did in a year, as recently as 2004.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, look, maybe I'll hold my hands up on this one. I've been a solar doubter for a while, but when the facts change, I change my mind. And the biggest pushback against solar is that it's intermittent, right? Meaning it only works when the sun shines. And it is true. Even in sunny places like Arizona, it's only producing energy about 25% of the time. That's great, except you want the fridge to work 100% of the time and the lights to work 100% of the time. What's happening here, what's new, and what people need to take into consideration is that the battery revolution is mitigating this big problem for solar. So basically, batteries have gotten so good, so cheap, so fast that you're essentially able to store up all this energy when the sun is shining and then use it at nighttime. Okay, so I'll show you a great chart here. So it's how California powered itself in April 2021. And you can see that yellow box of labeled solar power. There's a huge spike during the day, but then at the other times, the solar power doesn't work for you. But now you can see 3 years later in April 2024, either side of that big spike in solar power during the middle of the day, batteries are helping offset the intermittency. So you zoom out a couple of years and this trend is batteries are only going to get bigger and more dense. And I think solar power is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, it's all about the batteries, which means it's all about the cost. Cost of a lithium-ion battery has plunged 98% since the early 90s, and it's only going to keep getting cheaper. To me, the biggest pushback against solar is it got grants and tax breaks and loans galore, which makes you wonder how it would do on its own, And then there was this talking point that solar electricity is actually cheaper than fossil fuels for electricity generation. And it turns out that's not really true because you have to overbuild the solar capacity and you have to build the backup and all that stuff. So the exaggerations in how good solar was earlier is the reason that I was skeptical. But it seems like cheaper batteries solves pretty much any objection you can have with solar.
Yeah, I think today it's still iffy, right? Two things here. It reminds me of the mRNA vaccine during COVID. It's like this really good technology, but because the government kind of shoved it down our throats, we all got skeptical about it. So there's definitely a bit of that going on in solar. The other thing is that sometimes, whether it's space or nuclear or solar or other projects like that, you kind of need the government to step in at the start and give it a little kickstart. And I think they overdid it. I think they would have been much better off putting all this political will and money behind nuclear power. But nonetheless, you can't deny the facts that solar and batteries are getting cheaper and more powerful at an incredible rate.
You think we have like 10 years or so if batteries continue to improve at their current rate and the cost continues to come down at its current rate, where solar could, say, generate the bulk of electricity generation in the US?
It's hard to say because, I think you're going to see incredible things. I'm not sure if the whole grid can ever run on solar, because you just think about, like, could you save up enough electricity during the summertime to power America for the wintertime? I think solar is going to be great in a lot of places. I think it's going to continue to get cheaper, but you still need baseload power. And that's why, if you have to pick, I think nuclear power is still the best. As we'll show on this chart, it's still the cleanest and it's still the safest and still the densest of all the energies. But I would just encourage any solar haters out there to kind of update their priors with the new information.
Here's an idea. How about we don't have to choose between solar and nuclear? We can have both. So we need as much cheap energy as possible.
You read my mind. You read my mind. We need more energy because one of the big reasons, I know this is a topic for another time, but the reason why physical world technologies and innovations have stagnated is because energy got really expensive in the 70s. So more cheap energy, please. That's what we need, of all kinds.
I'll get you a hat that says more cheap energy on it.
I love it. Make cheap energy great again. All right, Dan. So I think California may have just killed the AI golden goose. So they just passed a bill that's going to require AI companies to test their systems before they release them. And it also gives politicians the ability to sue AI companies if the technology they release is used by criminals or does harm. It's almost like being able to sue gun manufacturers if someone goes and shoots someone. So what's your take on this bill? What does it mean?
Sounds, I don't know. There's a legitimate concern that, too powerful AI in the wrong hands could cause some really bad effects, just like you can't put nuclear bombs in the hands of everyone, right? But it seems to me like my understanding is that this regulates the power and the speed of the AI models rather than the actual uses of the AI models, which is like, if you want an equivalent of that, like, what if we had throttled the speed of the internet in the 90s because we were worried that too fast internet would make it too easy for hackers to steal people's money? Like, that would have been a complete disaster. It would have caused stagnation. How much lower would America's GDP be if we hadn't gotten high-speed internet over the last 20 years, right? So of course you make it illegal to steal money. You make it illegal to steal crimes, no matter what the tool is you're using, whether it's the internet or whether it's a gun or whether it's AI. But like, stepping on the power of the tool before we even know what it's going to be used for seems like a huge mistake.
Yeah, you're right. They regulate basically if a model is over a certain power, if it's powerful enough, it falls under these regulations. Give you a funny story. So they had laws similar to this back in the 90s. And of course, what do we know about computing power? It gets, it increases every single year. So when the PlayStation 2 was released in the early 2000s, it was regulated as a munition. It was like in the same category as Tomahawk cruise missiles because it had so much computing power that they couldn't even fathom back in the 90s. So you can, 4 companies have models over this threshold today. You'd imagine in 3 years, models this big are going to be running on our phone. So what is this going to do to crush innovation in the future?
Yeah, not good. I think of it like taxes too, where don't worry, we're only going to tax people who make over $500,000, but then you don't index it to inflation. And in like 30 years, most people are going to be making over $500,000. So it's probably the same thing with the AI model. It's going to have all sorts of unintended effects. Or if you're cynical, maybe intended effects, because the big companies are the ones with the lobbyists and the ones who have the money to actually deal with this stuff.
Exactly. It hurts the little guys. It's kind of like all those rules that were introduced on banks in '08, right? It made it impossible for new banks to start in America, and it made the too big to fail banks even bigger. Um, I always like reframing these things. So this law was passed because AI could do all these really really bad things, right? Well, AI right now is already helping um, with many medical things like helping cure specific types of deafness and blindness and find new life-saving drugs and all these type of things. So if you have an AI model that's really powerful and can cure disease, cure cancer potentially, and you're going to like potentially regulate it out of existence because of this, I just think it's absolutely crazy. Someone needs to maybe do a cost benefit analysis on this one.
Yeah, this goes back to the seen and the unseen in classical economics. You know what gives me pause, though? Elon Musk supports this bill, and Nancy Pelosi is against this bill. Normally, I would want to reverse whose side I was on.
I have a theory for why this is. Why do you think it is?
I don't know enough about it.
Okay. So I think Elon's paying a bit so I think Nancy just understands that there's going to be an exodus out of California. So she's looking after the tax base. I think Elon, if you noticed, I think the same week that he announced he supported the bill, he also announced XAI was moving to Texas. Elon supports regulation that's going to crush his competitors and then moves to the free state, Texas. So I think that's the bit of 5D chess going on, but I'm only guessing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I can appreciate that. Plus, Nancy Pelosi, as we all know, is one of the greatest traders of all time, and she owns a lot of big tech stocks. So,
talking a book, don't tell me what you think. Just show me what's in your portfolio, right?
All right, Stephen. I looked at you very funny when you first told me that you were moving your young family to Abu Dhabi. Explain yourself.
Yeah. So I've always had this theory that it's really important where your kids grow up, because not only for you, how you raise them, but the people that they grow up around. It's like you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It just rubs off on them. Only a theory, and then a new Harvard study came out, which basically it looked at almost 60 million kids in America between 1978 and 1992, and it basically found that the neighborhood your kids grew up in is one of the number one determinants of how well they do in life, because they grow up and they see these people with great jobs and they say, I want to be like that. And if I get a great job, I can do that too. So to bring it all back to me, basically Abu Dhabi and Dubai to another degree, it's basically a small community of strivers, immigrants who have moved from all over the world to be there, and I want my kids to grow up in that environment, an optimistic environment, one that supports entrepreneurship and innovation.
Is Ireland really that bad? I hear on the news that they're one of the highest per capita incomes and a haven for tech companies. Why do you want to get away from Ireland?
Yeah, so it's really a case of when I always say this, and sorry I didn't bring charts, but when you actually look at the wages, the average wages or the average consumption, the average American is much richer than the average Irishman. All those GDP per capita numbers and GDP are essentially inflated by Google and Amazon and Microsoft and Facebook having their European headquarters here. So it's like the money doesn't flow into the economy. But yeah, to answer your question, I think there's a certain mentality among Irish people that holds you back, and it's it's not the worst place to grow up, but don't be afraid to give up the good for the great, right?
I guess Abu Dhabi is not that far away from you. To me, to an American, Abu Dhabi is on the other side of the world. I guess it's the equivalent of an American moving to like Costa Rica or something like that.
Maybe, but I mean, there's direct flights from Abu Dhabi to San Francisco. How crazy is that? Direct flights, daily flights from New York to Abu Dhabi. So it's still within a flight, and you definitely know you're in a different country, but I think it will be good for my kids being there. So you will absolutely have to come and visit me during the summertime when it's 100 degrees plus outside.
I will absolutely
I know you love
not.
that.
I will absolutely not. I'll come in January when it's negative 20 degrees here.
There you go. There you go. All right, but look, I want to finish on a high note. I want to finish with a dose of optimism for today. So I always tell people that if you think your job is stressful, just spend a day in the maternity ward. Right? The midwives, they literally live with life and death every day. They have life and death in their hands. What could be worse than a mother losing her life during pregnancy, right? And the crazy thing is that for an American woman giving birth 100 years ago, having a kid was almost as dangerous as having breast cancer today. Thankfully, as I'll show you with this chart, it's exceedingly rare now because maternal mortality has plunged 98%. That's three trends that we're after talking about on this podcast, down 98%. But it's plunged 98% over the past century. So this is thanks to medical advances like antibiotics and such. And just a reminder that innovation and technology save lives and we need more of it.
Do you know if there's one like driver above all else of that? Like, for example, when you look at childhood mortality, by far that's plunged in the last 200 years. By far the biggest driver is vaccines. So do you know what the biggest driver is of the trend you just said?
I believe the two biggest drivers are antibiotics. I think in Ireland at least, you are injected with antibiotics as soon as you give birth because there's obviously you're open to infection. And the second one is just the presence of medical staff. So a lot of people just used to have births at home. Something goes wrong, you're kind of screwed. Whereas now, I mean, I'm sure 90+% of births are in hospitals. So there's that.
Some people still choose to have births at home, which I respect. But after watching 2 kids being born, and I cannot imagine doing that without any serious help.
Yeah, God bless you, but it's wise. You just think about a risky decision. That's a risky decision.
Viewers, if you're as fed up with the misleading news and obsessive negativity as we are, hit the subscribe button for more discussions like this.